Welcome everybody to RWD Gaming. I'm Baron, joined tonight with Philip. We're going to be talking about NPCs and important random encounters in our setting Critter Tales. I had the thought that important and reoccurring characters to kind of either tie to a quest or like a character's personal goals is kind of important. Philip, do you have any opinions on this?
So, yeah, I think that since we're kind of going for that whole Redwall-esque feeling to this setting, you were mentioning earlier in those books, they always encounter some sort of like NPCs that may or may not benefit them. They usually help them out, whether it's like Sir Gingivier or you have, I would even consider like
Chip or Chirp or the bird that they just provide with food for spying.
Exactly. And like even some of the abbots. I mean, I just really like how the NPCs are there in a setting and change with the setting. They like kind of help gauge where you are in this timeline, and always help on the missions. And so I think that we need to make sure we're including cool, interesting NPCs in our missions.
And I think one of the reasons why they do that in Redwall is kind of that sense of community. People meeting strangers and be willing to work together. Not necessarily just jumping to bed. I guess they do. See, Redwall's weird. They're very contradictory. They'll like, oh, so you're not a vermin. You must be all right. Come with us. And everything else is like, oh, you're a vermin. You're going to be evil.
Yeah.
And it usually turns out to be the case.
Yeah, and we want it to be more
ambiguous.
Yeah, exactly. This is more realistic in sense of characteristics and how they would fit in the world.
And that's kind of why I like our current party dynamic in the game we're playing. Everyone's kind of like a vermin-esque race and seeking to do good. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, exactly. I'm interested to see how this town is going to react to this band of mostly vermin, because
exactly.
that will kind of indicate how the setting reacts to the typical vermin versus good woodland creatures or whatever.
So while I was on vacation, I kind of made up a list of all the characters that we have dealt with thus far.
Okay.
Mostly player characters, just getting them all written down. We do have quite a no one's really doubled up on races, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then we have like some of my bad guys. We've come up with quite a bit of things, but they're very specific and not like stuff you'd see all over the place, kind of monsters and creatures and stuff. So I'm thinking that we should figure some sort of like monstrous entity that is kind of common but uncommon. Just like there is nothing really bigger than anything else except for like the large scale animals. And I just don't feel like we have a lot of those.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Unless we just go the route where it's like critter on critter fights, which is kind of what I'm trying to do right now, just because we don't have something with that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So I'm also like developing a story. I want to do a mini series, and I keep putting off that interest post. But I have thought a lot about that game. So what I was doing is I want one enemy, main opponent, antagonist to represent like evil civilization, and that's likely going to be the leaders of the armies, like
Tyrants,
bandit captains, tyrants, dictators, exactly, like creatures, playable creatures. And then also I want a kind of antagonist that is a beast or extremely powerful. And so I'm going to go with more or less an eagle. And so this eagle is like the beast, the feral antagonist. So we have a civilization antagonist and a feral antagonist. And then in addition, I think we should have like a Fey antagonist also.
Right on.
Just because I think those are the three core components of the setting. And so it makes you formulate a story around each of those components.
I can dig that. And as of what I know now, our two separate games are taking place at roughly the same time. So, I mean, I'm going to definitely try and use details from your game in my game and probably vice versa. But I would like to come up with separate entities like this.
Yeah.
Just because there's got to be a lot. There's got to be a lot of chaos in this time. So
Yeah.
if you're doing an eagle, I'll do like a boar, and then
Nice.
I'll have my own. I got this Lord Croak character that I could probably work with.
Yeah, he's a perfect like civilization almost. Civilization-esque.
The misstep, the wrong turn.
Yeah.
And then I don't have. He could probably be like he could go either way, I guess. But I also went through and kind of came up with just a character idea for each class. Trying to not double up on races. And then I kind of thought about some factions because a bit ago we were talking about NPCs and the importance of them growing. NPCs that NPCs know. The ability to affiliate with somebody else and get recognition into something else. And I feel like factions are a good example, and they utilize that kind of functionality.
Yeah, dude, so, that was great. I just wanted you to say that again. NPCs that NPCs know. That was really good. I like that.
I mean, like Matthias, he gets that ribbon from Basil Stag Hare, which ultimately prevents Captain Snow from killing him and hearing him out. So I'm not sure I want to take the party south and deal with the foreshadowed enemy, but I built it up too good. I'm pretty sure everyone wants to deal with the Leech Queen, but
yeah, who is like, I would say represents the Fey antagonist, right?
Oh, absolutely. But I've got a couple of them.
Okay,
and I don't necessarily want to jump into like this, end game scenario, because it's like I'm level 3. What the fuck?
Yeah.
It's like, and I mean, realistically, I could make it like challenge rating 11. So it's like, yeah, we're pretty reputable, but there's the potential to do like closer to epic level games should we get there. And I guess depending on what people have in mind for their character, you could definitely rapidly level and like fast forward through time once we get like a setup timeline. But I guess that's looking really far into the future.
Yeah, but yeah, I know what you're saying. It's good.
Faction-wise, a couple that there's one that I talked to you about that I came up with, and it's like the healer. I almost think of them like a Templar. Like they are holy men-ish healers. You know, they're respected for their wisdom on important things like farming and the weather and healing. And they would secretly have their own agenda, like keeping track of information or whatever. But they're like the descendants of Gilded's order, because she devotes her life to like a monastic practice afterward.
Right.
So
okay.
I kind of
almost like the Citadel in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, absolutely. Or like the Harpers from the Forgotten Realms, just people that are out to do the greater good, but they're willing to operate along their own lines to see these beings to an end. And then there'd be like the syndicate or some sort of evil conglomeration, and they might not even be evil. They might just be concerned with like money. So like at a glance, they seem like a free market guild or like union, but they're also like deep into the corruption of like slaving and drug trade or alcohol or you know, anything to make money, valuing money over critter life.
Almost mob-like.
Yeah. I've like a central banking system, like they're paying for the weapons on both sides of a conflict.
Oh, yeah, okay. So I'll just put what, Halliburton?
I mean, you can put whatever you want.
I'm just making a joke.
And then third, I came up with like basically like the Emerald Enclave from Forgotten Realms, like people out for nature, not necessarily like choosing to be feral over civil, but like trying to find that peaceable center ground where both can coexist without infringing too much on the other. And they are like, they're not good or evil. Basically, you know, they're neutral. They're for nature and peace, preservers of life. And I liked this one because it was like they would be led by like the best ranger in each region. There was like the main faction head in each region, and it's the best fucking ranger out of all the rangers in the area. And I guess it wouldn't necessarily have to be a ranger. It could be like a druid, or it could be a bar. Who fucking knows? Basically, the person that is like
clerics, or
basically the person that like knows this region and has this region's best interest at heart over everything else. And it's like, you know, there's so many rangers for each region's membership of this, but like only in the end one gets to be at the top. Maybe like captains and stuff. And originally I was like, oh, they should all be wildcats, and it's like, no, because you can't guarantee that a wildcat would succeed every time. Maybe the original heads of this faction were all wildcats that looked like the appearance of what region they were from. But I just like, maybe it's like, oh, you know, there's a shrew is the leader of this region, and you get there and it's like, this shrew is like, a guerrilla tactician extraordinaire and like sabotage, and he's incredibly smart or crafty, and he is, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, I like that. That's cool.
And then I had like a Bard's College, but I didn't really know how I'd want that one to be.
Oh yeah, the food one or what?
It could be any. There probably should be a cook's guild or some shit. That
Yeah.
would be pretty. I guess that's something to play with. I haven't really thought about that one too much.
And then obviously there's just like lots of armies, lots of small
Hordes.
tribes, yeah, hordes, like, you know,
I would almost imagine that like all areas outside of like the fringes of the Heartlands have been dealing with hordes the entirety. They come and they go. And maybe that's why there's no like concrete map of everything, is because it's constantly being rewritten.
yeah.
It's like, oh, there was a field here. Now it's, or there was a forest here and it got burnt to the ground. So now it's just a field.
Mm-hmm.
Give it a couple, 30, 50 years, it'll be a forest again.
Yeah.
But all right, so I guess what I would like to do is kind of see if there's any critiques on some of the factions that I've put forth already. If you got any faction ideas, and then maybe come up with a couple NPCs that you might have in your game or I might have in my game.
Okay. Yeah, so I like all these factions that you have here. They're pretty cool. Don't really have any critiques. Let's see. So for the one mission I half ran for you guys, I had a few factions in mind. There was also like a kind of mob-esque, maybe not as like involved in legal activity as your faction, but a little more leaning towards criminal activity, I guess, solely. And then also there was, I was thinking of like the Oak Guard. And the Oak Guard were basically just the protectors of the queen or the royalty of that city, the Heartland city. And, mostly skilled archers, good climbers, predominantly squirrels, but also other creatures. Depending on, like, they probably had other creatures serving other areas. But talking about that now reminds me of, like, I was also thinking of trying to have some symbols of trees, like different trees that were important to the setting. And I think that like kind of made up some regions in the Heartland area, the greater Heartland area. There's like 4 main regions. And
yeah, I think we were talking about this a little bit. The like different tree groupings, I guess, like certain dynamics for how the culture is set up inside of this particular area, like the dialects, if you will.
Exactly. So, different areas of the Heartland have different geographies. So it produces different kind of cultures. And basically, all of them are important to civilization. And I was definitely trying to put in some like mythology surrounding these trees too that are important. So there would be the first one is apple, or really any fruit. You can make it, or whatever kind of tree to represent.
Tree.
Yeah, fig tree. To represent kind of just like bounty, harvest, agriculture. You know, they're probably pretty affluent.
I think like the two most important trees in Norse mythology are like ash and yew. I want to say, because ash, one of them is for making bows and the other is for making houses or something like that. I just read a Norse mythology book a month or two ago.
Yeah,
I thought that was cool.
I looked at a ton of those kind of plant associations actually. And what I ended up doing is I looked at, I think there's like a Celtic tree, or trees in Celtic mythology. And there are like 1, 2. There's like 13 main trees in Celtic mythology that all are important in the Celtic calendar. And I was like, shit, that's way too many trees for me. I'm gonna cut that down to like 4. And then I kind of just like chose 4 from there. But each of these trees has different properties, exactly. And so
I didn't know that. I've got like a stack of fucking mythology books on my bookshelf right now. I'm on Native American right now. There's always cool shit you can draw from, and they're always like super nature based.
Yeah, I love it. Mythology is a great source of inspiration. So yeah, anyway, the apple tree I think is one, just because, yeah, an apple, you know, that's just like
it's a depiction for, crops, harvest. Could do corn, but that's not really a tree. But I picture corn as the second kind of depiction.
Yeah, and I'm sure though that kind of culture would also have a lot of other symbols like that.
There should be like a hunter and then gatherer, and then like a fishing. Yeah, that's up to you. Heartlands are all you, bud.
And then after that, I think that you need to have oak in there, and oak is kind of like the community tree to me. You know, oaks are huge. They house a lot of creatures. They protect. They're like protection. They're just magnificent, like kind of majestic almost to me. So I think that should be the actual source of the or the center of the heartland. So like
the oak capital,
you know, like
Oak
exactly
City.
The oak capital.
That's dope.
And it's obviously in a massive oak, and that's, yeah, I thought that's cool. And then so they would tend to be a little more pretentious, but also like maybe no nonsense kind of people, diplomats, merchants, maybe pleasant and polite, but almost like it's fake, or maybe like a little weary of outsiders almost.
I don't know. I kind of just gave Jose like a cultural ability for being from the Heartlands. As a native of the Heartlands, he finds it fairly easy to find accommodations for himself and good-looking critters. Should the occupant have the capability to support them. Just because I feel like every time they go somewhere in Redwall, it's like, oh, do you mind if we stay here? Not at all. Here's a bunch of food. Sleep great.
Yeah.
Maybe more food.
Exactly.
Hang out. You want to live here? You can live here. It's cool. It's weird. It's like, oh, we just met.
But they're from Redwall, so there's a certain associated like honorability with these creatures, and I think they would definitely have this in the Heartland, in the Oak City, and then probably more towards the north, like closer to the wildlands and outlands and stuff, the harsher environments. I think there would probably be that's where the pine is, or the evergreen, and that is like strength and like almost Norse like kind of culture, maybe Norse and Celtic, like definitely not large cities, but smaller tribes that are like
I think we lost him. You there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. You lagged out there for a second, so I caught like the first half of that.
Okay. Sorry. So yeah, pine, typical like maybe Norse and Celtic like tribes, not huge cities, but can still produce high quality goods.
Right yeah, I can dig that. That's probably like
Scottish Highland-ish
herders.
Yeah.
Ish, I guess. Maybe not necessarily herders, but I guess herding would be, because I kind of think of like each one of these touching on one of like the staples for like the birth of civilization. So like farming, herding, hunting, gathering. So
yeah.
And just kind of with the setup you got going right now, they're all kind of made an example of, like the apple being farming.
Well, what would the oak be though?
Probably gathering, whether it be like information or like coming together. Kind of a play on words really for that one.
Yeah.
But I mean, still, maybe like fetching things from one end of the tree to the other, or since, oak.
Yeah, I guess like tradition and like passing on things is also important for civilization. Like you don't have a civilization until you have like writing and like recording, and because if you can't record, then you can't really rise as a civilization. You need counting and like
right.
And so I would definitely see Oak City as a center of that aspect. Probably invented currency printed on oak leaves or something.
I can see that.
But yeah, the pine up north, yeah, they would represent more of the like blue collar, like they're logging trees to send back to Oak City to build structures and heat their homes, and like they're gathering natural resources, mining, fishing.
Yeah, I can dig that. Small like interfactions to your region.
Sorry, what was that?
Like internal factions to regions. Like, let's say you live in the south in like the swamplands, and you're like one of the fishing communities.
Yeah.
and all the fishing communities have somewhat like maybe a couple of them have rivalries or whatever, but for the most part, they all kind of work together to not infringe on each other. So it's like the fishermen's,
right.
And then you got like the rice farmers or something, and they all kind of work together. So it's like, oh, we don't associate with fishermen, we're farmers, or vice versa.
Except when you need to
like
trade your fish for rice, or your rice
exactly.
for fish.
So, and there'd be some people in these factions that are more inclined to trade than others. I seen an example of Thieves' Cant the other day, and it's like obviously Thieves' Cant is the ability to recognize like thief signs or whatever. And I always picture like the shadow marks from Skyrim. Like the Thieves Guild leaves these little symbols, and that never comes up anywhere.
Yeah.
This guy I seen in a game or talking about it, I don't remember. He was like making gestures in a tavern, and he did a performance check or deception check to do it discreetly. But it was like to like signal to thieves in the room that, hey, I'm a thief. Let's hook up or something like that. It was like using this. It's because it's obviously not a language. It's like an interpretation of body movements and shit like that, or like the way you're saying something. So like if you wanted to go about getting in touch with like a thieves.
Yeah. When I went to, that reminds me, when I went to college, I was in a fraternity, and so they have gestures and ways of like asking other people if they are in the same fraternity as you, and like, you know, and then there's like just different things that different gestures, and you have to like do them all. It's kind of funny. It's like secret signals basically.
Yeah, exactly. It's like on a need to know basis or ways. I had read this thing. It was like if you learn how to read Braille and you write all your speeches in Braille, you'd never have to look down at your note card.
Oh, that's pretty. Yeah, that's true.
And it was like, yeah, that's clever as shit. But I ain't gonna learn Braille, so.
I play a lot of strategy games, board games, and I've joked with some of my friends, like one in particular, like, dude, we should both learn like sign language so we can discuss our movements.
Morse code.
Yeah, Morse code.
That's what fucking, I think like Thomas Edison or someone did. So you could like do it in their hand.
Yeah. What's a... I couldn't figure a dot versus a dash in that though, right?
I don't fucking know, man. I can barely speak English.
No, but yeah, secret languages are really cool and should definitely be included in factions.
And I think once we get a little bit more playing in, we should kind of come up with like racial descriptions. Not anything like near as extensive as what they have in like the player's handbook, but like, you know, squirrel. Maybe we won't name them squirrels. It's like if you are a squirrel, you're a sequiri or some shit like that. And that's the race of these anthropomorphized critters. And it's like you have the mice, and it's like these are the misi. You got the rats. These are the rota. Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Once we get a little bit more into it, of course.
Yeah.
So some of the other NPCs that we have right now are like Waylon the Warden. You guys have a good reputation in the southern part of the Wildlands. You did save his son, so you do have a good rapport with him. Might go back up to the Northlands.
Wait, that was in the Southern Lands?
Yeah, it was in the southern part of the Wildlands in the north. So it was like on the edge of the Heartlands. And he is kind of like one of the more civilized villages, logging villages in this region. Um, he is probably part of like the trader, or he's probably a part of like the Emerald Enclave, like Rangers Guild. Maybe he's buds with the main dude. But I want there to be like a monarchy up there. Maybe even if it's savage, some sort of like he is king. I wanted to do moles, like moles under the mountain, but um, eh, maybe like a wildcat ruler or something. So we got Waylon the Warden, Waylon's son, the hedgehog. I don't remember his name. He was a shopkeep from up there. And then there's the constable that the party dealt with in the quest you weren't in dealing with Croak. So
that's the swampland that he's in?
Yep, to the south. I'm hopping all over the goddamn place.
No, that's fine.
And then some other ones that I've come up with is Halifax, the Wildcat Ranger. I picture this character as definitely one of the lead faction heads of the nature faction. I haven't really determined a region yet. Just a like super Sir Gingerbeer. Like he's nobility, but he's very humble. He doesn't eat red meat. He only eats fish. Just a super badass, like an Aragorn or something like that, but a wildcat. And he doesn't have lands or nothing. His kingdom is the entire region.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of figured that there should be like 4 of these like characters that are like not necessarily super powerful, but like faction heads, and they represent the cardinal directions. So like one faction head would be, because in Japanese and I think Chinese mythology, they have like a creature for each direction. Like to the east, it's the dragon. To the north is the something. To the west is like the boar or something else. And I know to the south, it's like the turtle. So like a representation of each. So I might go back and look and see if I can find like what like meaning behind these directions, like the birth, the death, the whatever, to kind of come up with better ones for those. And then I have the couple characters that I made. I got a monk hare who I would picture, now that we have some factions, would definitely be in like the healer order. Maybe he's on like, I want to press more into character goals, like what your character is trying to accomplish, like what you are doing, and why the quests and shit you're trying to accomplish is to benefit and help get that goal as a means to an end. Because it's just murder hobos in a different context.
Yeah.
There isn't any rhyme or reason for it. You got to be motivated. So it's almost worth like coming up with like a figurehead for the enemy, and then everyone coming together and giving the reason for why they don't like this person without any restrictions, and then we kind of come up with this bad guy from there.
Yeah. I mean, that's also why I think it's nice to have the 3 main antagonists, because that way you can kind of like tie in kind of these antagonists together, and you can tie them directly to the party differently. There's just with that many different ones, it's easier to formulate connections, I think.
Right on. We'll have to
yeah.
Maybe spend some time in the beginning on Friday kind of deciphering people's goals and motivations.
Mhm.
getting a bearing for that. Probably a good idea. And then I want to like ultimately give you objectives outside of what each other knows. So it's like you were in contact with this person and he needs the task done a certain way, but no one else knows that. And there may be repercussions for that should they find out or not.
Yeah, like I had Slick.
Yeah, he was going to kill my dad.
Yeah, his mark was your dad. And,
Stuff like that, yeah.
hopefully you were going to find out about that and confront him or something, and then he could say who gave him that order, and, you would find out about that guy. And anyway.
It would be cool if, like, maybe the horde that made off with Jose's family may have been the horde you were hooked up with before, and he doesn't know that.
Oh, dude, that is good. That is definitely good.
So, like, when he asks you about where you're from, you're like, around here and
exactly.
there.
And I'm not going to be probably, I don't know, I'm kind of like a little snivelly, so I guess I might talk about my time in the military and like lie about how good of a soldier I was just to make myself sound better. But yeah, I might want to hold that back from him because he's a pretty big squirrel, huh?
Yeah, he's a barbarian.
Yeah.
And we need to kind of flesh out the bee patron fae a little bit more. I know you were basing it off the Raven Queen, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So
I'll just mechanically, not like
right. Okay, good to know. Just because I want to, I feel like that part is kind of foregoed on the Warlock's end in most games, is like the relationship with the patron.
So
I was talking.
The way,
go ahead.
The way I see our relationship is basically, I am hesitant to do good things, and this is a benevolent fae that pushes me to do good things. Basically, as a way of punishing me for
misdeeds.
Well, because I was a gatherer in the army. So while I was gathering with my rat compatriots, huge cave of honey, and we hacked it down and took as much as we could with us back to the army to feed them. And as we were leaving with our huge horde, we got attacked by the bee fae, basically, and the rest of my compatriots got wiped out, but I hid and ran, ran and hid. And so eventually the bee patron just like made me serve her as my punishment. Yeah.
I was talking to Jeremy next day. I was talking to Jeremy about warlocks, and I guess one of the first characters he played in 5e was a warlock of the Archfiend, and it was like his relationship was he was kind of abusing the power until the patron was like asking him to do something for it, and he would refuse, and he like ultimately got dragged to hell or something. And it's like, yeah, there should be like, I want to, if you do something that's not like deemed worthy in the eyes of your patron, I want to be able to emulate that in the game for you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you go to do something with the power your next round, and you hear like a voice in your head that's like, sorry.
Yeah, it probably will speak through my familiar, which is a large bee. So, you know, like the bee would like maybe sting me if I did something that the patron is not happy with.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
stealing, if I steal again, or harm natural beauty specifically, probably. Maybe less so concerned about civilizations, but like if I harm
Picture
habitat.
she would definitely be a proponent of order and like
Yeah,
servitude.
yeah, exactly. So like probably if I did chaotic things rather than lawful things.
Yeah, that would probably make sense rather than good or evil. I feel like she kind of lays outside that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like the tyrannical.
Lawful and nature.
Absolutely. So that's kind of like her area is order. I dig it.
Yeah.
Some characters that I came up with were like a hedgehog druid. He wouldn't be a shapeshifter. He'd be like of the land, being able to like manipulate trees and such. A skunk fighter.
Nice.
And I picture this as like a swashbuckler or like panache or dexterity based character. He would use his like spray as a lot. He would be embarrassed by using his spray, and he'd be like the swash, almost like a Pepe Le Pew if Pepe Le Pew used rapier.
Yeah, yeah. Nice.
Then I have my otter barbarian that we came up with, which we talked about it. Dude, sea otters are fucking huge.
Dude, I know. I was telling you.
They can go up to like 4'11", and it's like, what?
That's bigger than a lot of girls I know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's ridiculous. So it's like, okay, so my sea otter barbarian is a truck compared to everything else. He's just gonna run through everything. And I picture he's kind of like the pirate captain. Maybe
just start his shit.
Yep, absolutely. Fucking, he's got like earrings and an eye patch, and his weapon is like a harpoon or like a large fishing spear.
Nice.
And he's almost like a gladiator fighter in the way he fights, because I want him to have like a net as well.
Oh yeah, that's sweet. That's great.
And then I have this idea for a bard. It's a fox. And he's going to utilize one of the Unearthed Arcana schools of bardic. It's the School of Shadows or the School of Whispers or something. And it's like, he is not a fighter by any means. He's a manipulator. And he doesn't actually even do anything. He like convinces people to do stuff. I kind of picture this guy as like a Gandalf almost. He just gets the shit into place. A mole cleric that like instead of worshiping nature, he worships Earth at its entirety. So like, there would be a fae that is like the patron. It'd be a mole fae, obviously. And maybe he would be a cleric of the old, maybe even a cleric of the champions. He could be like a forge cleric or something. But I was kind of thinking like the Avatar Earthbender. He would be like all about earth magics and like turning like solid earth to mud or sand or whatever. Just be kind of like, this would be like a position of importance in mole culture, is like these earth priests. They bless the tunnels, they are consulted with earth tremors and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
A mouse or rat paladin, because I need I need a Martin. So Tinmar,
dude.
the paladin.
Nice. It's got to be a mouse. Do a mouse for sure.
Yeah, and he's gonna be, sword and shield, full male.
Yeah.
Badass. A squirrel rogue.
Yeah.
Thief. Like could do assassin, because I feel like squirrels with archery would be broken.
Mm-hmm.
But I picture just like the Bilbo Baggins, the burglar. This is a squirrel that gets in, gets what he needs, gets out. Probably a red squirrel. He can climb, he can get around, he's quick. A weasel warlock.
Nice.
And he is actually going to be like a patron of a dryad, so like one of the elder gods, and it's basically like a pact with the Archfey. It's the exact same fucking thing. It's exactly what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's going to be like, his pact with nature is like, as a weasel, he was run out of community, and though it'll be one of those cases where it's like, don't judge a book. He's run out of town because he's a vermin, but he's not a bad critter at all. He's just labeled what he is, maybe guilty by association or some shit, and he's left out to die, and he's going to die, and like in his dying breath, he's like, this wasn't fair. I didn't do anything to deserve this. And so like the Archfey will be like, I usually don't give a shit, but you're right, you did get shafted pretty hard. So let's make a deal. And it'll be like, I want to do a lot of like nature protecting. A lot of I feel like factional conflicts will be like the savage things, like no technology, no civilization, like war, destroy this, and then there'll be like the civilization, we gotta purge these feral critters, and then there'll be the people that are trying to find that middle ground where they can work, and he'll be one of those. Or he might be one of the feral, like trying to get rid of society through just like nature taking it back. For sorcerer, I didn't come up with that one because I didn't really know what a critter sorcerer would be like yet.
Yeah.
I kind of am thinking like a sparrow.
That would be cool.
It'd be like a descendant, like he is the descendant, he's eagle blood. And
yeah.
I almost picture like eagles and the bears and the wolves and the boars and all these large scale critters would have some magical abilities, because like I feel like if we just get like talents,
they definitely have magical abilities.
Like the eagle can change the direction of the winds, or the boar can re-terrace mountains in the south or the marshlands with his stomps, or stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like maybe the sparrow's like the descendant of a firebird or the thunderbird, and so there's a storm
sorcerer based.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's the descendant.
Also, we were talking about having some of the major birds just be like reskinned dragons.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
If you take that one, then you can totally do draconic ancestry for sorcerers too, in which case it would still make great sense. So either one is great.
Absolutely. So I guess that really makes that simple as fuck. And then my wizard, I went a shrew diviner, and
nice.
I kind of wanted him to be like the burnt shells, like rattling a huge,
Shamanistic.
yep, and then like tossing them into the sand and being able to read
Yeah.
patterns in like the stars and like clouds and stuff. And
Yeah.
he would be from the coast, and he's like a hermit that lives on the cliffside. And
Fuck yeah.
I almost picture him as more of an NPC than a character, but as a character, I think he'd be really fun to play.
Yeah, that's cool.
Those are just some. That's a character for each one of the classes without doubling up the races.
That's awesome.
I know that Wizards is coming out with like the compendium of the Unearthed Arcana that made it through testing.
Yeah,
in like
Xanthar's
November.
Guide to Everything or something, right?
Yep. So I'm curious as to what stuff made it into like the polished copy, and I'm sure we'll be able to utilize those for like factions and stuff. I don't think we should have psionics. That's just me. Okay. I think that gets too confusing. There's already like the suggestion spell and whatnot, but like as soon as you get into like psionic attacks and psychic attacks, it's not necessary in my mind.
Yeah.
I guess unless you wanted to make a character like that, at which case you could just reskin other spells. But I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I just in terms of like there's like a psychic class, I think.
Okay, yeah.
But it just in terms of the setting, it doesn't seem necessary. In my mind.
Yeah, no, I don't think it is. I mean, obviously, make the case, right? Like, if you think
if you want to play it,
tell me how you're going to make it work, and then you can decide. But yeah, in general, I would agree. There are a lot of things. I would even say, like, a wizard should probably be discouraged. It's not a very common.
And that's what
I would say.
Told Jose. I mean, I already told him, like,
fine to have it. Yeah.
I told him, yeah, if you want to play one, go ahead. We do already have 2 spellcasters, so it wouldn't be necessarily too vital. But yeah, I'm not going to necessarily discourage it, but I'm going to definitely tell them that, like, you know, that kind of limits where you can be from and maybe some of the perks that you can get. Like, maybe all the wizards are from, like, the Heartlands, and, like, sorcerers are not from the Heartlands at all. Wild magic is not a cool thing. Something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm 100% for the plead your case if it makes sense and you're willing to negotiate. I won't ever tell anyone no. I had an idea and I was just about one of those that were lost. I also I took some notes just while we were listening to like details I heard Brian Jake say. Rats are generally untalented in terms of fletching arrows and stringing bows.
They're generally untalented in what?
Fletching arrows and stringing bows.
Oh, interesting.
Squirrels and otters are naturally curious. It's just like weird things that he like.
No, yeah, that's really cool. Yeah.
So maybe like incorporate that into like the culture thing. It's like, hey,
definitely.
Some people can roll their tongue. Some people can't snap. I can't fletch arrows.
Mm-hmm.
Magic items. We talked about them being very few and far between. I like that. But I feel like our parties, being the heroes of the story, would definitely be more inclined to come across these than others.
For sure.
And so relics of like the champion era.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I fucking remember what I was gonna say. All right, we're gonna pinhole the artifacts.
Okay.
A spell burn system like in Harbinger. I've pretty much come to the conclusion that I'm going to start doing spell casting a little bit modified. I know in like Dungeon Crawl Classics, there's a spell burn table that Matt Click told me about. Basically, it's like Harbinger. If you're out of spell slots and you're in a situation where it's like, I need to fucking cast, it always fucking sucks. It sucks so bad. It's like, I have a class that's built around this ability, and at a certain point, I can't use it anymore at all.
Yeah.
No matter what. And it's like, if I'm in a dire circumstance, I should be able to direly activate my ability with a potential consequence to myself.
Yeah.
And that's what I really, really enjoy about the magic system in Harbinger is the risk reward. Is it worth it?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's not. And you don't always get to choose. And I like that.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to start using like that table a little bit modified for spellcasting, just because like Warlock, for example, you get like 2 spell slots. You can cast Eldritch Blast, but then it kind of limits you to your diversity of your turns. It's like
for sure.
Eldritch Blast.
Just keep
Eldritch
going.
Blast. Eldritch Blast.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you had the ability to like sign more of a contract with this patron for whatever, like roll the die. You can cast a spell, but you have this mild side effect or whatever, depending on how powerful of a spell you want to cast. I want to start incorporating that because it's just, it sucks when it's like, oh, we just busted ass getting through this dungeon.
Now you have no spells left for the main battle.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, oh, okay, well, can we take a rest?
Can we take a long rest? Yeah.
It's like, no, you're in a dungeon. There's bad shit in here. You can, I guess. But yeah, a spell burn. I actually would probably see about checking out Dungeon Crawl Classics because I hear good things. As if I didn't have enough fucking systems to play and work on. Back to the magic items. There was a couple that I had come up with, and it was like each one of the figureheads for like the natural order regions would have one like specific to their region. Like the coastal guy, maybe his is like a sail, and no matter what, the sail always catches the wind.
Nice. Yeah.
Maybe like the guy to the north, his is like a blanket. It's like a thin blanket, like can be traveled with easily, but when like rolled out, it's like a livable shelter or something like that. Like the guy to the west in the desert, he has a never-ending canteen. And like the guy to the south, he's got like a boat that you can unfold into a canoe or something.
Yeah, dude, that's cool. I'd like that the magical items aren't like absurdly powerful. I think that's great. They're like, they seem powerful because there's not very many, but when you give those creatures that level of magic items, that's great.
And I mean, realistically, like in Redwall, like the main item you hear about is Martin's sword.
Yeah.
And it's like,
exactly.
There's a certain it's just a sword that's made out of a meteorite that can cut through anything.
Exactly.
What's the big deal? Who cares? I don't feel like a lot of the magic items in this will necessarily be weapons. There will be, of course, be magic weapons. I ain't fucking skimping out on the good part of the game, but
yeah,
I feel like a lot of the magic items would be very like utility, not necessarily like this sword can cut through fucking anything. It's like, this jug never runs out of water. Ever.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, do you have any idea how, like, you know, this fucking, like, warden comes strolling through town on his rounds through the region, and all the little fucking, like, emaciated, thirsty kids run out of their homes because they know that he's Canteen Man. Yeah, he fills everybody up, and you know the villagers are like, we know you can't stay long because there's other villagers, and all the kids are like, oh, you know, Canteen Man, tell us stories.
Yeah,
Stuff like that, and like, so the magic item that I came up with was Gilded Shield, and it's like a gold and white shield that was given to her by the Fae to like protect her. And I want to say this shield would like resist. It would give you basically all the other damage resistance, like the types of energy resistances. Like this would be a powerful item.
Yeah.
So like if you're from the Heartlands and you got force resistance, this shield would give you fire resistance, ice resistance, electrical resistance, so on and so forth. And then I had the Pelt of Giriorn, which, if you recall, Giriorn was the skinless wolf, the wolf who was skinned. And his pelt beforehand was deemed indestructible. So basically the functionality of the Pelt of Giriorn is it's a cloak that basically translates to you wearing full plate mail without the weight repercussions.
Cool.
And if you were a druid, it would be considered a natural item.
Oh, natural. Yeah, fuck yeah.
And like realistically, this is another one of those items that's like super late game, and there'll be lower scale magic items and like lower scale Fae. Just a couple more like protection based rather than like attack based.
Mm-hmm.
Like a defending. There will be obviously like a staff of fireballs.
Yeah.
And the like, but maybe like because there's a like a foxfire Fae that I'm working on who is the representation of war. I'm thinking that her magic item will be like a lighter or something similar to a lighter, and it's like the Fae always use this to light the torches or light the fires of war.
Nice.
I lost my place. I've got, yeah, I just really, I guess to kind of wrap up what we were talking about today, would like to have characters show up that are in my games also show up in your games. Yeah. Traveling merchants, we should probably have a couple traveling merchants that sell different things that show up occasionally. So we should work on that. I came up with a town in the south of the Heartlands called Halwort. It's just kind of like a little, not necessarily little, it's a community in the southern part of the Heartlands, like a border between the swamp and Heartlands. A buffer to keep unsavory individuals. That's just kind of where the quest is going to be taking place this weekend.
Nice.
And other than that, I mean, I don't have any NPCs at the moment. It's getting kind of late, so I figure we could probably wrap it up here.
Okay, yeah. I started a few, or not a few, a couple Word documents in the Google Drive. We're taking a couple notes on the factions and NPCs that we were talking about.
Okay. So, I'll check them out here in the next couple of days and see if I can add anything to them. I know I got a couple Fae that I need to put into the list that I haven't yet. that I've come up with.
Okay.
And I'm thinking that a couple of the characters that I came up with classes that I will be making NPCs, I'll probably make them onto character sheets, and
Nice.
I'll try and use the detailed character sheets that you get from the wizards, so we can kind of get like a picture to go with them and like personality, so we're both RPing them the same. You know what I mean?
That's cool. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
And we can just get some like random art online. So like when you're playing your game, you can, throw that image up, and then when I'm playing in mine, we can throw the same image up and kind of reinforce that. I need to get more images. I feel like if I had more images, differentiating between who's talking would be better.
I just saw on the AbTab community forum or Facebook that Anna Dunster can do like sketches.
Yep, I've seen that too. She's doing commissions.
Yeah, and I went and I looked at some of her art and DeviantArt, and it seems like she could do anthropomorphized creatures pretty easily. And so I was thinking, like I'm definitely down to throw in, some money to see if like once we get a list of NPCs, maybe like pick the top 5 to 10 that maybe we want drawn, and we can talk to her and just be like, hey, we'll give you this much. Can you draw some
cash? Can you give it? That'd be dope. That'd be dope as fuck. Because then we'd have our own art.
Yeah, dude. Exactly.
Sick. Oh my god.
And then we can. And speaking of which, I think maybe I just want to talk real quickly about the name. What do you think? I don't really like Critter Tales very much, to be honest.
That's fine. I was always really partial to Badges and Burrows, or Burrows and Badgers.
That one is much better than Critter Tales.
You said like Tooth, Tail, and something the other day, but after finding that game on PSN, definitely can't use Tooth and Tail.
No. Yeah, you told me about the game Tooth and Tail, and I was like, right before you said that, I was thinking about Tooth, Claw, and Tail, or Tail, Tooth, and Claw. But then I was like, well, let's change it to Fang, Fur, and Ferocity or something like that. Or maybe even
what
just
about Fire and Fur?
Fire and Fur, yeah. Yeah. Fire and Fur, or Fire and Fang, maybe.
I'm not really Fur and Ferocity, Badges and Burrows, Critter Tail.
Yeah,
it is. I've been calling it the Critter game, so
yeah.
I'm pretty sure our group chat for the game is called Critters. So.
Yeah, I saw that. But I don't know. I
don't know if you checked out that fucking Tooth and Tail game.
Tooth and Tail. It looks sweet. I saw the ad for it, or the promo
trailer. I played it. It's kind of hard.
Really?
Just because it's a strategy game and you got to get the controls down, and there's no easy way to do a one player versus computer. You got to set it up in an unranked lobby. It leaves a little bit to be desired, but the concept fucking blew me away. It's like, oh, so let's fucking skip this entire fucking 4 seasons process with all the chant. Fuck that. Let's go ahead to the next fucking winner when it's all guns and shit.
Wait, what? Maybe I didn't pay that much attention.
No, it was just an analogy. It's like ours is taking place in the fantasy.
Yeah.
So the next spring would be oh, here's critters with guns. And then there's the summer where it's the big war of critters with guns.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because the units are fucking dope. There's a couple different factions. There's the long coats, which are for equal treatment of everybody. Then there's the commoners, which are the lowborns. There's the military units, and then there's the similarists or something. They're like the highborn nobles.
Nice.
Your units, you get like the distillery boys, which are a bunch of drunk squirrels that have guns. You got like a big unit that costs a lot of money is this fox with a sniper rifle. And it's like this fox is really good because it can stealth really easily and fucking it was cool because it's just like taking what we're doing, you know, and jumping ahead 700 years of technological advancement.
Yeah.
And, you know,
that is cool.
I feel like it would be cool if we came up with like an expansion later on that was like realistically using similar mechanics to like guns and stuff is pre-existing material, but just like the factions and stuff we come up with, like, oh, you know, this critter race is gone now. They were killed by a war between this critter race. And it's like you got like an Assassin's League of foxes, and they're all like snipers and piano wire.
Yeah.
And you got like the Presidential Guard, which is the hares, and there's like the President Hedgehog.
Nice.
And you got like Winston Church Mouse. Shit of this stuff. Nonetheless, hang out for a second after I end the video. But to anyone that's watching this for whatever reason, I hope you enjoyed it. So we are going to be signing off. Another successful workshop video for our Redwall-esque D&D setting that is to be determined on a name. We'll be signing off. Thanks for joining us.